Good morning and welcome to OLC4O, Term 1B. Today is December 6, 2022. This is class number 14. We are on Unit 2 and we are on Lesson 6. So today's class will be talking about assignments 20 and 21. So we're moving right along. Unit 2 is definitely a shorter unit than Unit 1. We should be able to move through this one a lot quicker than we did Unit 1. And of course, back in Unit 1, we were just getting used to the chorus, learning a bunch of new stuff. So we are in week number 4 of classes in Term 1B. There will be no classes during the Christmas break, and the last day of class is January 26, 2023. So if you're doing this on an independent learning, then independent learners are going to go till June of 2023. But if you're taking this course and you're registered in Term 1B, then Term 1B will end on that date. Or sorry, that's the last day of broadcast. Following the last day of broadcast, there'll be a week after that where you'll have a chance to write your final exam or a final culminating assignment depending on the situation in your community and where you're at. So ideally we get you to write an exam, and then once you pass the exam and you've handed in your coursework, then you pass this course. So there are, of course, 4 ways you can interact with the class live. So we have our studio phone-in numbers, watching on radio, Bell ExpressVu channel 972, and of course the Zoom link. So if you're watching this on YouTube, you can pause the screen, write this information down, and of course this information is in the study guide, available at your learning center, talking to your DEC, phoning the WASA office, or getting in touch with me, your teacher. So as I always say, I'm really happy to see the YouTube videos ticking up. Search for me on YouTube. You will see 2 playlists. If you go to playlists, you'll see the OLC4O playlist, and then you'll also see a Unit 1 playlist. Actually, yeah, you'll see 3 playlists. You'll see a Unit 1 playlist, a Unit 2 playlist, and you'll see a OLC4O, which has every video. So I'm trying to make it a bit easier for you to find the content and the particular unit that you want to watch. You need to submit your work to your DEC and myself. So you can either go to the Learning Center and just give your work directly to your DEC, or you can do it yourself, scanning, emailing it, faxing, taking a photo with your phone, emailing it, sending it on Facebook Messenger, whatever the case may be. Oh, Messenger is a capital M, proper noun. We should capitalize that. And yeah, get your work to us. And if you don't know how to get your work to us, ask questions, reach out to someone who works at WASA. If you want to get in touch with me, my email address is on the screen. Find me on Facebook. Send me a message. Please give me a call. The first one will incur charges. The second one is a free long-distance number. That's when to find me, 9 to 3, Monday through Friday, Central Standard Time. And here's where you should be at, okay? So you should have read all of Unit 1 by now. You should start reading Unit 2, maybe, the first 1 to 10 pages or so. Assignments 1 through 13 should be taken care of, and you should be making a plan for completing assignments 14 through 18. So these are the final ones in Unit 1. So you should be wrapping up Unit 1 and looking at moving ahead to Unit 2, which we will do today. So today's lesson, we'll cover the words of the day, we'll cover today's headline, and we're going to look at Assignment 20 and Assignment 21, both of which deal with textbooks. And, looking at what is a textbook, how is a textbook laid out, what are the features of a textbook, what are the conventions. A convention is something that is common to pretty much every textbook or every kind of something. If something is conventional, it follows a predictable pattern. So what are the predictable patterns of a textbook? What are the common features that we see in most of them? So our learning goals are going to be to learn about the conventions of textbooks, how they're formatted, how they're organized. We're going to review reading strategies for understanding textbooks, so we're going to do those two things. And we'll be successful today if we can use our knowledge and understanding of textbooks to complete assignments 20 and 21. So if you complete assignments 20 and 21 successfully using your understanding of textbooks, then today's lesson will be a success, both for myself and for you, the student. So before we go into the words of the day, just wanted to put this amazing image I found on Google just by doing a Google image search. So you've got I love the cave, the outline of the cave. We've got a nice bird down here, and we've got the tree, and of course the tree's foliage, the branches, the leaves look sort of like the cerebellum, looks sort of like the human brain, the way it curves into each other. Yeah, beautiful image. So this is the tree of life, or this is the tree of knowledge. Yeah, gorgeous image. Just love staring at that. I stared at this last night while I was lesson planning. Thought that was a beautiful image, and it's a nice segue into today's words of the day. And just a little primer here. So what we were looking at there was the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. This is the tree that's featured in the first book of the Bible, the book of Genesis, sometimes known as the tree of life or the tree of everything. And when we say the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, that means it's the knowledge of everything. You know everything good, you know everything evil. And so that is, Adam and Eve are innocent. They don't know about the world. And then when they eat from that tree, they're aware of the world, and it kind of makes them, they're not pure anymore. They're not innocent anymore. And it's sometimes called the fall of man. They become flawed because they know about everything. They know about the world, and then they have to deal with it, right? So we don't live in a perfect world. We don't live in paradise. We live in an imperfect world, and to know about that is to know everything. So a lot of cultures around the globe have legends and myths about a world tree. So it's a gigantic tree that connects the underworld, the place where the gods live, or God, and the place where humans live, right? So the Vikings had this, Africans had this, a lot of Middle Eastern cultures had this. And then interestingly enough, when we talk about the fields of study that we might find, in textbooks, these fields of studies are often called branches of knowledge, right? So one example would be a large branch would be science. So one branch in the tree of knowledge would be science, and then a smaller branch that might break off from that would be biology, which is one aspect of science. Biology is the study of life. And then an even smaller branch would be botany, which is the study of plants, right? So you have larger categories like science that then break into smaller categories. And this is similar to how the title of a book will then break down into chapters, and then the chapters of the book will break down into headings, and the headings of the book will break down into subheadings, and the subheadings will break down into paragraphs, and the paragraphs break down into sentences, right? So it's larger levels of organization that sort of break down, but thought that'd be a nice segue into today's word of the day. So I will struggle with the pronunciation of this one, this Anishinaabe-Moan word. I believe, if I'm doing this correctly, Gikenu Amadi Mazanaigan, which is a noun, which is a school book. And then the English equivalent I found is textbook. a book used by students as a standard work for a particular branch of study, right? So textbooks typically deal with a branch of study, right? So we have science textbooks and biology textbooks and history textbooks and mathematics textbooks. So textbooks usually deal with a pretty broad topic, right? They're not usually just about one very specific thing. They're usually about a category of things. So even though like science is one thing, you might find a science textbook or a biology textbook, but you know, biology is a huge subject that has many different aspects to it, right? Same with writing or English, right? There's so much to talk about, or music or art, right? They're huge categories, and it's hard to talk about them unless you chunk them up and you break them up into different categories. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So if we're looking at Anishinaabe-Moan, we've got 3 words. And again, you know, if we pay attention to the start of the word, we find this prefix, right? So I love breaking down words, seeing how they work. So the prefix in this case is G-I-K. The first word is he or she knows. The second word is teach, to let know. And the third word is school, right? And so that G-I-K prefix, I'm not 100% because I don't speak the language, but if I make an inference, if I make an educated guess, I would say that that G-I-K prefix, it's got to do with teaching and learning, right? That's got to be the root of that word, right? So gikendam, he or she knows. Gikenu amau, teach, to let know. Gikenu amadiwa gigamag is a school. So again, I apologize if I am not pronouncing that correctly. I'm doing my best, trying to learn as many words as I can in the language and trying to make some comparisons to English. So these are some related words to textbook. They're not quite synonyms. They're not really the same meanings, but they're related words. So the first one is a monograph. So a monograph is a detailed written study of a single specialized subject or an aspect of it. So whereas a textbook deals with like a very broad level thing, a monograph would be about one thing. So you might have a monograph about like pine trees, or like you might, you could have a textbook about mathematics, but maybe, a monograph about like one mathematician. Mono means one, and then graph means, to write. So basically to write about one thing. Nonfiction, so it's good to have this terminology down. So nonfiction, the technical definition is prose, and prose is everything that's writing but is not poetry, okay? So it's writing that's not poetry. So it's prose writing that is informative or factual rather than fictional. So fictional is, of course, made up. I'm a former librarian, and I often had this discussion with people about what's fiction, what's nonfiction, and sometimes it gets confusing, right? Because you can have a nonfiction book that's about fiction, right? So it's like somebody talking about fiction, and in that case, there might be fiction in the book, but it's technically nonfiction. The example I'd always use is, a book about Sasquatches, right? Or you can have a nonfiction book about dragons, right? So whether or not you believe dragons are real, nonfiction is it's giving us information, and fiction is just telling a story. And you can tell a story with nonfiction, right? So there's but it's nonfiction is textbooks and pamphlets and biographies, right? Manuscript is an author's handwritten text or a typed text that has not yet been published. That's from the Latin manu, which means by hand. You see other words like manual labor, that's work done with your hands. Scriptus means written, so written by hand. Or it's like a manuscript that's someone's written but they haven't published it yet, right? They've gone through step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 of the writing process. They've planned, they've written, they've revised, they've edited, but they have not yet published. So there we go, a little bit of background knowledge for today's lesson. Let's jump into today's headlines. So we've got Canadian-funded group works to remove landmines left in Ukraine after Russian retreat. And so we've got 3 people here. You see they've got the Canadian flag on their identification kit on their chest right there. And what they're doing is they're trying to identify landmines and to mark them. So God bless them as they do this extremely dangerous work to try to make Ukraine a safer place. So the small yellow stakes in the middle of a vast field outside Kyiv appear harmless, but they are not. 3 explosions have rocked this field, including a fatal one that destroyed a military vehicle. So we'll break down that headline. We've got our adjectives in, that should be orange at the top. Our nouns are in blue. Our prepositions are in red. And our verbs are in green. That should be green as well. So there's our headline. Let's break that down. So we've got a group. That's a noun. What kind of group? A Canadian-funded group. And then you see how these 2 words are joined with the hyphen? And they function as one word. You know, once you put the hyphen in there, they function as one word. So what kind of group is it? It's a Canadian group. The adjective and the noun are always a pair, right? What did they do? They work to remove landmines. Okay, so that's pretty straightforward. We're getting pretty familiar with the parts of speech now. Left in Ukraine. Ukraine is, of course, a special kind of noun. It's a proper noun, so we always capitalize it, capital U, Ukraine. After Russian retreat. So what kind of a retreat was it? It was the Russian retreat. We have that adjective, the adjective-noun pairing, which they always go together. And remember, our prepositions are relationship words. They tell us where things happen, and they tell us when things happened. So when we're thinking about our newspaper report from Unit 2, when we're writing about the who, what, where, why, when, and how of a story, prepositions are very useful because they tell us where things happen and they tell us when things happen. So very important words in the English language. So that's the function of a preposition. They give their relationship words, and the relationship between 2 things, the relationship between me and my dog, the relationship between me and the smartboard that I'm working on, basically comes down to where I am in relation to that thing. Am I standing in front of it? Am I on top of it? Am I behind it? Am I underneath it? And my relationship to things is also time, right? You know, am I coming in after the meeting has started? Am I there before the meeting has started, right? So, you know, we're in the world and we're in a particular time. So very useful words for describing the world. So let's do a breakdown of that lead paragraph. And there it is. That's the first paragraph of this Globe and Mail article. So remember, I'm trying to give you real-world examples of professional writers who are out there in the world making a living through their words. And it's important to look at how they write and break down what they do and to learn from it, right? So this is the lead paragraph. So we've got our where. We know what happened in Kyiv. And then we know, so we know where the story takes place. So what happened? I would say 3 explosions. So I would say that these are kind of explain the what's happening. Let's see, where's that word? Why do I not see landmines? Middle of field. But they are not. 3 explosions have rocked. Okay, yeah, so we know that there's been explosions in Kyiv. And then from there, we're going to learn, you know, how it happened, why it happened, and who is doing something to make the problem maybe not go away, but to improve the situation. So we start things off with an independent clause. Remember, independent clauses, they can stand alone as a sentence. And they have, so that's requirement 1. And requirement 2 is they have, we're all going to be experts in this stuff by the end of this course, right? They have a subject and a verb. Subject and verb. So, small yellow stakes, that's my subject, and appear, that's my verb, okay? So that could stand alone as a sentence. The small yellow stakes in the middle of a vast field outside Kyiv appear harmless. I could put a period there and call it a day. But what the author has done is they've joined that independent clause to a phrase, okay? And the phrase is, but they are not, which is, of course, not a sentence. But they are not cannot stand alone as a sentence. There's no subject, there's no verb, there's no noun. It's just 4 words. But they do give us more information, right? So these things appear harmless, but they are not. So we join it with a comma and a conjunction. Anytime we use the fanboys, right? So for, and, but, or, fan, yet, so, right? F-A-N, nor. Forgot about nor. F-A-N-B-O-Y-S. Anytime we use for, and, but, nor, or, yet, so, to combine parts of a sentence, we should be putting the comma first, and then the conjunction, and then the rest of the phrase. Second part of the headline, this is how it's written. Okay, this is from the article. And it reads, 3 explosions have rocked this field, including a fatal one that destroyed a military vehicle. Okay? So that first part could be it is an independent clause. 3 explosions have rocked this field. So we could change that and we could say 3 explosions, including a fatal one that destroyed a military vehicle, have rocked this field. So 3 explosions have rocked this field. That is a complete sentence. And then in the middle of that sentence, we have put this extra information. So the fact that one of them was fatal and destroyed a military vehicle, in the first example, that comes at the end of the sentence, but we could put that in the middle of the sentence. Now, when you're writing a sentence, the reader has to sort of carry information and then wait for you to finish your thought, right? So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There's 9 words in those brackets. So that's probably the limit of how much you want to put in those brackets, right? You don't want the reader, because the reader has to hold on to 3 explosions and then come back to have rocked this field. So maybe that's why the author chose to kind of front load the information and then put that the detail about it being fatal at the end. Another way we could rewrite it, we could say a fatal explosion, one of the 3 that rocked this field, destroyed a military vehicle. So all three examples are grammatically correct. They have the right punctuation. Everything is spelled correctly, but they have a slightly different meaning depending on, how they're organized. And I would say, I'll give it to the author that I would say that first one probably does read the best. And it probably, it's written by a professional, so I say that one probably does read the best. And the ones that I wrote, the bottom two, they're okay, they work, but it just shows you that that's one of the things that makes writing so great, is that you have so many options, but it also makes writing so difficult, right? There's lots of ways you can do something. There's many ways to write a sentence, and deciding which one is the best is the work of being a writer and being an editor. You have to make decisions, you have to make choices. And all of this, like when we're rewriting a sentence, this is editing, okay? This is editing. So remember, revision is when we're doing the big picture stuff. When we're editing a sentence, we're making little decisions and deciding on punctuation and word choice. So this is the stuff that makes your writing shine, okay? Editing is what makes a final draft, right? So you get your ideas on the page and then you edit, okay? All right, so let's jump into today's assignments. So assignment 20, we're talking about understanding a textbook. So I'm assuming most or all of us are familiar with textbooks. We know what a textbook is. We've held one in our hands. We've had a teacher force us to read one. But it's important to look at it with fresh eyes and just look at how it's organized, because like all books, they are organized in a specific way. And most books are laid out in a very similar way. So again, I was a librarian for about 10 years, and I learned this pretty intimately as I, pored over thousands and thousands of books. You start to notice the patterns, and that's a really important thing to keep in mind here, is we're talking about patterns. And when we take English courses, a lot of what we do in English is pattern recognition. You learn the patterns, and then you see how those patterns play out in real life. Like the patterns of telling a story, the patterns of a myth, the patterns of writing a sentence, right? There's only so many ways to do something. But within that, there's lots of room for creativity and complexity. It's like playing a game of chess, right? When you play a game of chess, you have to follow the rules. You have to move your queen this way. You have to move the pawn this way. But within those rules, there's like trillions of different games, literally, you can play with the game of chess. But you have to understand the patterns. So these are true strategies we can approach when we're looking at a textbook, okay? So once we understand how a textbook is laid out and we open it up, these are two reading strategies that start off assignment 20. So there's skimming, and skimming is when you're looking at the entire page for titles, headings, subheadings, illustrations, charts, opening, closing sentences. So skimming is when you're not looking for anything in particular, right? So skimming is when we're just, a general, it's a good word, a general overview, right? This is the big picture, right? What is this page all about? What's on this page? Taking a lay of the land, right? So a good metaphor would be if you're out in the bush and you come to a clearing and you're just scanning the landscape, and you're just scanning, like, okay, I see a lake over here, there's a hill over here, I can see a little patch of marshy stuff over here, there's a stand of poplars over there, a bunch of birch trees over here. You're just looking at the big picture. You're taking in the whole thing and just skimming, right? you're just looking at the surface, right? You know, like when you skim a pool, you're just skimming the surface. Now, scanning, alternatively, is different. So scanning is specific, right? That's a specific search. And instead of the big picture, you're looking for the details, right? There's a cliche or a phrase that goes, you know, he or she couldn't see the forest for the trees, right? So sometimes we only see the big picture, and we don't see the details, or alternatively, we get really focused on the details and we can't see how those details fit into a bigger picture or a bigger forest or a bigger landscape, whatever the case may be. So when we scan, we're looking for keywords, ideas. We're looking for bold-faced, italicized words. We're searching for specific numbers or dates. Like, I'm looking for the date 1941. Like, let's say I'm reading a textbook about World War II, and I know that something happened in the year 1941. I can scan a page and look for that number, 1941. Or I want to learn about the Bismarck, or I want to learn about you know, the nuclear bomb, or I want to learn about D-Day, or, you know, something like that. I'm looking for a specific word, and I'm trying to scan the page for it. And the skimming technique is, you know, just looking at the general big picture stuff. So there's a series of questions. You know, what's the first thing that catches your attention? What is a subheader? Who wrote the alphabet versus the goddess? What is the main idea of the page? What are some of the techniques used on the page to draw your attention to certain areas? What will you usually find at the beginning of most chapters, right? So the first thing that catches your attention, that's probably going to be when you're just skimming, right? When you skim the page, your eyes kind of jump everywhere, and there's going to be something that grabs your attention first, right? Who wrote the alphabet versus the goddess, right? In that case, we're not skimming. You're going to be scanning, right? You're going to scan, and your eyes are scanning for that specific group of words, alphabet versus the goddess. What is the main idea of the page, right? What are some of the techniques used on the page to draw your attention to certain areas? So I'll put the textbook page up in a sec, okay? Name 3 examples of typography. What is the purpose of typography? So again, you're going to scan that word, typography, right? If the question says, what is typography, or what's the purpose of it, your eye should be scanning for that letter. It's sort of like doing a word search, right? Your eyes can scan a whole block of random letters looking for one specific word. That's scanning. If you're looking for a word that starts with S, you're going to ignore everything that's not an S and just target that letter S. Once you find the letter S, you'll look for the second letter, and on and on and on. What do students need to know about supplemental information? Why are textbooks frequently color-coded? Okay, so all of these questions are answered when you read the textbook, okay? So I blew that textbook up so to give you a better idea of, so when you look at this thing, it's a lot of text, and your eyes are going to jump all over the place. The first thing that caught my eye was this yellow section right here. If everything is black and white, but a couple of things are colored, yeah, for sure, your brain's gonna go for the colored stuff, right? So our brains are really designed to look at new stuff and things that are different, right? Because, you know, it goes back to a time when we could have been eaten by stuff on a regular basis, or, you know, other humans could have been trying to get us all the time, right? So anything that stands out, anything that's new, anything that's different, our eyes are drawn to it, right? So any kind of highlighting or color is certainly going to draw your attention, right? So, and when you scan, you know, when our eyes and our brain scan something, you know, we usually kind of go like down, over, up. It's sort of like all over the map. Your eyes just jumping like, okay, boom, boom, boom. It's not really logical. You're just sort of looking everywhere. You're taking in the whole thing. But usually when you scanning is a little bit more methodical, where when you scan, you should probably kind of go here and then go back over here, right? And then kind of go back, right? Because when you're scanning for information, you don't want to miss it, right? You want to make sure you scan every section. It's sort of like, you know, those people looking for landmines in the field. You don't want to just skim and just have a general overview. When you scan, you got to be methodical and look kind of like left to right, have a look for things. You know, if you scan that quickly and look for the word typography, you'll see there's a little sidebar right here, right? And the word typography might jump out at you, and then you'll know about typography, okay? Which is bold, underline, italics, things like that. You know, scrolling down, you know, we got the blue here. That stuff's going to grab our attention. The green, the bright green, fun facts, right? Trying to make things stand out. The internet connection. We've got, if we're looking for the alphabet and the goddess, I can see alphabet, goddess right here. Does that tell me who wrote the alphabet and the goddess? It doesn't. So I'm going to scan. I'm going to see that. Oh, I see it up here. So I'm just scanning for those words, alphabet, goddess, and there it is. I found them. So that's the difference about how to use a textbook, how to how to look for information. So and today's class, we're going to delve into that a little bit, just looking at information, how to speed things up, how to use your time correctly. Because you don't want to waste too much time, looking through a bunch of information if it's not going to be useful for you. So it's important to learn these skills, when to skim, when to scan, and when to do a detailed sentence by sentence, word by word, careful reading. Usually when you find the thing you want to get to, then you you change focus and then you read it a little more carefully. All right, assignment 21 is talking about textbook features, okay? So for this assignment, you will select any subject that interests you and find the textbook, so it's got to be a textbook, okay, that offers information about the subject. You can also find the textbook online by searching on Google Books. You will then fill out the textbook analysis chart to complete this assignment. So just very briefly, I'm going to pull that up for you. So we're going to look at Google Books. So if you just search Google Books on Google, it's books.google.ca, and see we're on Google Books. And I would suggest searching for a subject you're interested in, right? So let's do geology, right? And there we go. I've got Geology for Dummies. Not really a textbook. Geology for Kids, sort of getting there. Let's go Geology textbook. Okay, there we go. We have the geology textbook. Usually when you're doing research, it's nice to find something more current. So 2000 is getting a little bit old. See if I can find something. Okay, I got Geology, A Complete Introduction, 2016. So I like that one. I'm going to click on that book. And when we read the book, I've got the ISBN. We've got the publisher. I've got my author, David Rothery. It's 384 pages. And there we go. So let's see. Will it actually... Okay, get the book. Let's see. See, it wants me to buy the book. Okay, let's go back and let's change that to I want books. Let's see, any document. Let's do books. Maybe any view. I want the full view. So you see under view, I've changed that to full view because I want the free one. I want to read the whole thing. And I want books. I'm going to do 20th. I'm going to do a 21st century. I want some current stuff. So let's try this one. The Elements of Geology. Okay, there we go. And so instead of a preview, I'm getting the full thing. So there's the title page. There's my preface. And there is my table of contents. And so there you go. So I've got a book. This one's actually 100 years old. I think they republished it. Yeah, but have a look through here. You will find some textbooks on Google Books. And you'll find some free stuff, right? It is sort of hard to find stuff that's a little more current, but you can find it on this page if you're stuck. So, I would definitely recommend finding a physical textbook, but if you can find let's just go biology. Let's try that. If you can find the textbook, maybe you can find one on Google Books, and I would suggest you try that out. So, there we go. So that might work. So, I mean, I think option one, try to find yourself the real thing. But if you can't do that, then try to look around online. You might find an online version, or just talk to me, and I'll be able to help you find something. Okay, help you find the textbook that you can use for this assignment. Okay, so once you found your textbook, then you're going to fill in your textbook feature analysis chart. And it's going to ask you a series of questions. So one of which is going to be about the ISBN, which of course stands for the International Standard Book Number. That's a 13-digit number usually found on the back cover of a book, bottom right corner. So usually that's where you find it. And it's got those 13 numbers. The first three are always 978, followed by, the first three are this, followed by 10 more, right? 338. So every book that gets published gets an ISBN, and it's how bookstores and libraries kind of catalog and inventory their books. So every book gets an ISBN. If you publish 100,000 copies, all 100,000 copies have that same ISBN, right? So it's just a way of identifying that specific book. The hardcover is going to have a different version than the soft cover. So different versions of a book, right, are going to have a different ISBN, and that's where you usually find it. The index is a really important device, a really important way that we can find information. So just like your index finger, that is your that is your index finger is your pointer finger. It points you in the right direction when you're looking for a specific word or a phrase. So if you look at these examples of an index, the word background is going to appear on these pages, 47, 93. So if I go to any one of these pages, I'll find the word background. So I don't have to scan or skim. I can simply go to the index, and the index is usually at the back of the book, and it's a very useful feature that the writers of the books will use, right? So go to that, look for the index if you're looking for a specific word, okay? This second one is a biography. It's a list of historical characters. So William Blake, I've got Lewis Hamilton, Ernest Hemingway. If I want to find every reference to one of those characters, it's got the pages for me right there. It tells me what page to go to if I want to learn about that author. So it's kind of like a table of contents where you look for the thing you want to find out, and then you see what page you're going to find it on. It's just a bit of a different approach. Whereas the table of contents, will usually be, and again, I've got bold chapters, and then I've got my headings. So that's a heading. These are my bold chapters. And then maybe within those headings, there may be subheadings within each one. Okay, there we go. So, there's a subheading right here. So the book is divided into chapters, which are divided into headings, which are divided into subheadings. So the information is chunked up and is put into discrete little chunks of information that makes it easy for us to find it. Sometimes the first part of the book is written in these Roman numerals, right? So the first parts of the book are written in Roman numerals, so the declaration, the preface, the abstract. So, and then chapter 1 is usually where page 1 begins. And these Roman numerals are reserved for the stuff that comes at the start of the book. We call that like the pretext, or the the stuff that comes before the main text. And then we might have an index at the end. Sometimes we see a bibliography at the end of a book, a list of all the other books that it references. You might see a glossary, a list of words you'll find, like a list of words with definitions, right? So an index is a list of words, but it tells you where the words are found in that book. A glossary is like a little mini dictionary with definitions. So it's going to ask us some questions like, what is the title of the textbook? So I want to use the full title and the subtitle, right? So if a book's got a subtitle, use both, okay? So we usually see title, colon, subtitle. That's how it usually happens, right? So organic chemistry, colon, an introduction to an exciting field, or something like that. So use the full title and the subtitle. Who are the authors of the textbook? I want you to list all of them. List all of them, please. Okay. How many pages does the textbook have? Okay, that's simple. And that should be listed by simply flipping to the last page of the book. What's the name of the publisher? Okay, so full name. And the publisher is the company that published the book, right? Full name of the company. This is going to be like Nelson, for example, is going to be a publisher, right? The full name. What is the ISBN? So I want you to list it. 978 ... You're going to create a citation using the format. So name of the author, title, publisher, location, name of publisher, date of publication. So use that template right there and just sort of fill in the blanks, okay? So give me the name of the author, the title of the book, tell me where it was published. So usually most books are the same way. When you open the book and you flip it open, you'll see the title page of the book on the right. You flip the page again, and then you should see a bunch of bibliographic information about the book on the left-hand side of the page. So if you flip open a book, just flip through the first 2 or 3 pages, and on the left-hand side of the book, you should see a list of information that tells you who published the book, where they published the book, the name of the book, who wrote the book, the name of the publisher, and then when they published it. That should all be listed. So the year of publication, right? That's your date. Okay, where is the table of contents? So, where in the book is there a page number for the table of contents? How is the information in the table of contents organized? Okay, so be specific. Don't just say, they put stuff in categories. What stuff? What categories? How many chapters, sections does this textbook have? Okay, so tell me how many chapters, how many sections that book has, okay? Where is the index? Page number, be specific, Always be specific. How is this information organized? Does this textbook have any other sections at the end of the book besides the index? List them, okay? So, again, how is the index organized? So be as specific as possible. And so for assignment 22, you are skimming and you are scanning. And then what you're doing is you're looking at the textbook pages offered in the book. So you skim over the whole thing, and then in one sentence, write down what you think the passage is about, the main idea, right? So just look over the whole thing, every page in your text, in your course material, and then what do you think it's about? Now you scan the passage, and then when you scan it, you're going to look for these words: men, older boys, indigenous family, Europeans, right? And baffled, right? So you're looking for those specific words. You're scanning for those specific words. Remember, scanning is specific, skimming is general. Why were the families of the early indigenous people considered egalitarian? If you are unsure of the meaning of the word egalitarian, try using the context of the word to figure it out. Try reading past it to see if you can make sense of the question without the word. Or try using a dictionary. Question 4. Why did European men often live or marry indigenous women? So again, if you're answering that question, you're going to scan the words European, scan the word wives, scan the word women. So just briefly, that's what the textbook page looks like there. You see parenting styles. They've actually bolded that word for you. You've got some headings here to guide you. So if I want to learn about family histories, I should look under that heading. Don't forget to check out the sidebars, right? You might have some additional information there that might come in handy. And so when you're just quickly scanning for the information, you're looking for specific words. And when you're skimming, you're just looking at the general organization, just getting in the lay of the land, seeing how the story is written. So try to use those techniques when you look through this sample of a textbook. Use the scanning, use the skimming technique, pay attention to these headings, and look for important dates like that. Look for important words like children and women when you're trying to find your answers, Europeans. So use those strategies. I think you'll be successful if you can put those to work. And we'll come back and do it all again tomorrow and keep moving through lesson 2. Thanks for tuning in.